oriented towards. And I want to also recognize that CHOGM is taking place during Pride Month. For those who do not know, Pride Month, Pride is celebrated by the queer community, LGBTI persons, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex community. And I speak as a Black, proud lesbian woman in front of you. It's quite important for us not to invisibilize people. We are talking accountability for gender equality. The great man, Nelson Mandela, who we all know, spoke about breaking the chains of freedom. The history that we all gathered here, that we share, that is common, is the legacy of colonialization that brought also injustice, that brought criminalization. It criminalized many of us, and many of us continue to be criminalized in countries where we are citizens, where we are born equal. And I want us to understand we are born equal. We are born of parents, of mothers who love, who adores us. But as we grow in society, we seem not to become equal, and we cause division. And those divisions are caused by social constructions. And those divisions are maintained by you and I in society, because you and I live today. Now, as citizens of the Commonwealth, we have many questions that we must ask ourselves. What is our role today in the agenda of fighting for equality, for justice, for freedom, for all in our diversities? When did we contribute to divide humanity for what it is? Now, coming back to the topic at hand, it's really about what existing mechanisms exist that at a global level are focused on gender equality. And we mustn't look at mechanisms just as systems and structures that are put in place from the base just on how we are only going to be rhetoric. Those systems, the structures, when you speak about gender equality, when you speak about advancement, when you speak about accountability, they are there for a reason. And the reason is us to advance and transform change so that we all can live in prosperity. These systems safeguards realities and lives of people, where even our governments can commit to the future progress, and you can only commit to the future progress today. It matters for us to reflect on what we lack as countries so that we can ensure that the future looks much better. But you can only do that also if you consider what are the incentives that comes with the system change and transformation. What is that incentive structure, the carrot and sticks, to encourage ambition? Many of these mechanisms, whether you're talking about CEDAW, whether you're talking about UPR mechanisms, they are there to remind us of our commitment. But they also are there to hold us accountable as people. We all are talking, and some of my panelists were even sharing what sustainable development goals mean and why they are important. Not only just one when we refer to Goal 5, but all, because they speak to all of us and they speak to our daily lives. Now, if you take a mechanism like UPR, it's a unique mechanism that is established by the United Nations Assembly, which is mandated, of course, by the Human Rights Council to undertake a periodic review. Our countries go and report. We've seen this, we've been part of these conversations, and we look at progress every now and then. And we realize and we recognize the novel aspect of this mechanism, where even worse, it mandates and looks at the political landscape and agenda that member states can take forward. I think there are quite a number of things. So many 18 years, there has been silence. Silence that you find in spaces and platforms of debate, of common agenda, even at international level. Even here in the African Union, I'm African, so it's quite important to always reflect about mechanism even here. But the silence of invisibilizing LGBTI people, I want to say it rots injustices. It costs life. And we cannot continue to have mechanisms that does not take us into consideration, but yet we are alive. In countries around the world, human rights violations based on sexual orientation and gender identity are all too common. This includes the use of death penalty, criminal sanctions, torture, disappearance, denial of freedoms of expressions and assembly, denial of refugee and asylum claims, discrimination in access to health care, employment, education, housing. Over 70 states continue globally to impose criminal sanction against consensual same-sex relations. And of course, over 30 countries in the Commonwealth continue to criminalize same-sex persons, which already is telling us that only few countries in the Commonwealth has made progress. How are we accountable within the Commonwealth? So there are certain things we can celebrate. A country that I come from, as Stephen has made reference, have got quite a celebrated constitution, and many other countries, and we've seen progress even in the last 5 years, Seychelles, Botswana, Belize, Mozambique. We know there are quite a number of countries that I can list that have moved and progressively observed this. But these countries that have not moved continue to have the anti-LGBTI laws and political language or agenda that pose barriers of social acceptance, health, and well-being. We need to overcome homophobia and transphobia. But to do so, it requires us not only just to change the legislation framework, it requires us to change the attitude, cultural valuations, politics, social will. But it also requires us to have that political will. Are we ready to utilize mechanisms that are empowering us, whether as governments, whether as legislatures, whether as judiciary? Are we ready to really do so? I want to say, understand the vulnerabilities, understand inequalities that many LGBTI experience, the exclusion, limitation of service, human rights violation, socioeconomic issues, and societal institutions must be understood alongside. I want to, so that I don't take too much time, indicate the recent finding by CEDAW, which I want us to recognize. It has actually found Sri Lanka to have violated the rights of Rosanna, who has been protecting and fighting for the rights of LGBTI persons. And the country has had a recommendation by CEDAW to review its laws and protect the rights of LGBTI people. It is due to LGBTI activists, which I want us to recognize. There is a delegation of TCEN, the Commonwealth Equality Network. If they can stand up, they come from different countries. They come from different countries, different regions in the Americas, Caribbean, here in Africa, Pacific Island, Europe, and they continue to fight and champion what we call justice. And if many of you are ready for equality, you will stand with us. Mm-hmm. And if you are not ready, don't claim to be fighting for equality because you are not ready. Equality is meant for all. Equality is meant to be enjoyed by all. And the dignity is meant to be enjoyed by all. I want to close by saying that social inclusion requires dismantling all legislation that criminalizes sexual orientation or even gender identity for that matter. States, member states, even of the Commonwealth, for a common goal, observing the rule of law, respect for humanity and human rights will be critical. Respecting democracy will be critical. Making sure that as much as Commonwealth is consensus-based, we can agree on a common agenda of humanity. And that common agenda of humanity will require us to strengthen in our own countries and in our own region, strengthening accountability mechanism for global gender equality. We must make hard choices, and we must also be prepared to do trade-offs. But that will require us to understand a developmental agenda that is smart, that is committed and prepared for equality. And to make accountability and equality to work for all, let there be justice for all, let there be peace for all, freedom for all, let there be equality for all. We are better together. And if we understand the African philosophy, I am because you are. Thank you so much.